He was destined for greatness, but as his father, Philip II, felt, he was also just a kid. Before he could demand people treat him like a god, he had to figure out how to be a man. And a king. Okay, let's set the scene. It's 343 BC. Macedonia Kingdom, that used to be considered a rough, backward place, had been completely transformed by King Philip II. Philip was a brilliant commander, a clever politician, and he had this one massive goal: get all the squabbling Greek cities together, and then hit back at the greatest power on earth, the Persian Empire. Aristotle, Alexander's tutor, advised him, you're going to inherit an army, Alexander, but you can't just swing a sword. You need to lead with wisdom. You need to understand the big ideas that organize the universe and, more importantly, organize people. But the young Alexander was single-minded, saying, the Iliad is all I need, master. Achilles is the man. All I care about is his kind of glory. Aristotle warned him. Achilles was a disaster waiting to happen all emotion. Your prince need to be the one making the smart, logical choices. Philip basically spared no expense. He hired Aristotle, the superstar philosopher, to give Alex the best education possible. He soaked up everything: public speaking, science, philosophy. But the biggest thing Aristotle taught him? That Greek culture was awesome. That was their job to spread it around the world. After the Battle of Chaeronea, where Alexander fought alongside his father, Philip boasted, we crushed them. The best fighters in Thebes are finished. Athens is on its knees. After today, at Chaeronea, Macedon runs Greece. At the Battle of Chaeronea, Alexander was the one who led the final charge with the elite companion cavalry. He was 18 years old. That day, he went from a prince to a world-class general. Just 2 years later, Philip was dead killed in a huge mystery. All his dreams of invasion, that giant army, the supreme power, it all landed on Alexander. He was 20. The vultures immediately started circling, but the kid was ready. The lion cub was now king. Alexander didn't waste a second. He locked down Greece, and then, in 330 for B. See, he crossed into what is now Turkey with about 40,000 troops. Declaring his intention, he announced, this spear wins us Asia. Let's go get it. This wasn't just a small fight. It was the start of a 10-year war that would completely change the map. His first real test was at the Granicus River. It was a messy, personal brawl between Alexander and the local Persian nobles. He won, but it was too close for comfort. He learned the big lessons. His men would follow him into hell, and he needed to be smarter about staying alive. He arrived at the city of Gordium and saw the legendary knot. Instead of spending weeks trying to pick it apart, Alexander just pulled out his sword and sliced the thing right down the middle. That was his style, cut through the complexity and get straight to the solution. The big showdown came at Issus. Darius III himself brought the entire Persian army. Alexander played it smart by choosing a tight battlefield. Then he led a crazy charge, not just against the Persian wing, but straight for Darius. As the Persian emperor witnessed the charge, he later said, Darius III, I saw him coming. The charge was unstoppable. That young man was fighting with the intensity of a storm, not a human. Alexander chased Darius hard. When the Persian king panicked and fled the field, leaving his whole family, his wife, mother, and kids behind, the battle was over. Darius, the king of kings, was totally disgraced. 2 years later, they had their final face-off on the huge plains of Gaugamela. Darius had gathered an army that was absolutely massive, bringing war elephants and those terrifying chariots. Alexander used the phalanx and his cavalry to pull off a daring move. He marched diagonally, forcing the Persians to stretch their lines too thin. Alexander described the moment of opportunity. Alexander II said, I saw the gap. It was like slow motion. Everything was chaos, but I knew exactly what to do. I drove my best men right into the opening. Darius ran away again. Gaugamela wasn't just a battle. It was the end of the Persian Empire, which had stood for centuries. Alexander marched into the great capitals Babylon, Susa, and the ceremonial heart of the empire, Persepolis, and announced he was now the king of Asia. One of his generals, Parmenion, urged him to stop, saying, Your Majesty, the riches here are endless. We've won the whole war. It's time to go home. Secure the land we have. Alexander rejected the advice. Go home? Parmenion, you see the end of a trip. I see the start of an adventure. I know the world doesn't just stop at the edge of this continent. Alexander kept going. He became obsessed with catching Darius, who was finally killed by one of his own relatives, a guy named Bessus. Alexander gave Darius a huge, proper funeral and executed the murderer. But all this constant marching was really getting to his men. And to him. In a terrible moment of drunken fury, Alexander killed his close friend, Cletus the Black. Cletus's last words were an angry challenge to Alexander's growing arrogance. Cletus the Black, you wear the silks. You demand we bow down. You've forgotten the people who bled for you, the Macedonians. Your father was a real king, not some crazy, drunken monster. The next day, Alexander was devastated, totally overwhelmed by guilt. But even after that horrible mistake, he kept pushing eastward. To make his empire stick, Alexander started forcing his Macedonian nobles to marry Persian women. He wanted to mix the two cultures into one new elite class. But his generals hated this, and they especially hated that he made them perform the Persian custom of bowing down to him. They felt he was abandoning them. The campaign went deep into India, culminating in a vicious battle against King Porus. The soldiers, totally beaten, refused to go on. The veteran general, speaking for the weary men, simply said, "Veteran general, we're done, my king. We have nothing left. Our homes are 10 years away. We won't take another step." Alexander threw a fit, he cried. But for the very first time, his unbelievable determination was overruled by his own army. At the Hyphasis River, the conquest stopped. His dream of marching to the ocean was finished. The trip back was a disaster. Alexander decided to lead the main group through the uncharted Gedrosian Desert. Thousands of people died from heat and thirst. It was a pointless, tragic waste of life. Alexander returned to Babylon, but his health was shot. His generals, desperate for an heir, stood around his deathbed. Ptolemy and Craterus exchanged worried words. Ptolemy asked, he has to name his heir. "He just has two," Craterus replied. "He doesn't think anyone is good enough." His generals kept asking him for his final wish. "Who do you leave the empire to?" Alexander's final, prophetic answer was Alexander to the strongest. At 32, Alexander the Great was gone. His empire instantly fell apart. His generals, the guys known as the Diadochi, spent the next few decades in brutal wars, carving up the land. You got the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid power in the east, the Antigonids back in Macedon. The idea of one united world under one ruler died with Alexander. But his impact, that's what lasted. He built over 70 cities, and almost all of them were named Alexandria. He physically dragged Greek ideas, art, and language, what we call Hellenism, all the way to India. He paved the way, centuries later, for the Roman Empire and the eventual spread of Christianity. Even the language the New Testament was written in was the common Greek that Alexander made popular across the Middle East. Was he the best general? Undefeated, so maybe. Was he a good man? He was a killer, a tyrant, a drunk, and yet a brilliant student of philosophy. Alexander the Great is one of those people you just can't fit into a box. In just 10 years, he showed that the supposed end of the world was really just a starting line. He didn't rule for long, but he completely changed the way the world looked and thought. He was a force of nature, and when the floodwater went down, the entire shore was different.